can I just say, guys, thank you so much for everything that you do. Like, and I'm doing some training with Tim at the moment, outside of this, and we're talking about team and how we recognise team and how we run teams and stuff like that. And part of that process, it'll actually do it for Paul as well. Sounds like more than naughty stuff. I can get myself tied up in task rather than team. And for me, I'm very task driven, and sometimes I will admit that the team takes a back step from that. So my first apology is I'm sorry if that's happened. If you feel that I've done that, and this is not like a confessional, I'll just say, look, this is where I've stood. You know, as a leader, I'm very task driven, and as a result, I can sometimes minimise team over getting that task done. And if that's ever a thing, please come and talk to me about it, because that's not how I want this team to work. Because actually, you know, we look at the whole of Scripture, and it's all about team first, and then the task gets done second. And so that's my foundation. If nothing else comes out of this morning, let that be like, you guys, what you do is amazing. You know, what you achieve on a Sunday morning, whatever you think your abilities are, the fact you're getting sound out of the speakers and the congregation don't know any better is amazing, because actually that's what the congregation want, is to be able to get into that place of worship. Now what we do on top of that is great, and if you have aspirations of going, oh, I want to perfect it, I want the EQ to sound amazing, I want to be on point for every time someone's at the front, that doesn't matter. Great, I applaud you for doing that, and that's exactly where I'm at. You know, I want to better myself. I want to be like doing stuff that's amazing. It sounds awesome, and people go away, "Wow, what a morning!" Not because I've done something special, but because God's got involved. You know, that's what I want. But I can walk away going, "I did a really good job this morning." But like, what I want from you guys is, if you've managed to get the desk set up, the band sound checked, sound coming out the speakers, and nobody's died, I think you can consider that as a good morning. And you can walk away going, I worshipped this morning, you know, I served my God and my church this morning. Yeah. That is literally the bar I want to set going. Yeah. If you achieve that, then I love you and you're doing amazing. If you can't get to that, I want to help you, I want to mentor you, but also, if you want to push further, then I'm right there beside you, and we can journey through this carnage together. Like I've said before, Sunday morning is not a time of practice, and last Sunday I found myself fiddling, and I made a bit of a boo-boo, which a few people recognise. I was playing with delay, because we had two backing vocals, I was playing with delay, and I was going, why is it not working, why is it not working? I faded right up, okay, there's nothing coming out, there's no delay. Like, Reverb's working fine, but there's no delay. So I don't know if you've noticed, there's a flashing light on this desk called Tap Tempo. And basically what you do is you set the tempo of the song, and the desk will automatically set the length of the delay to fit with that song. Anyway, I had it set infinitely fast, so in case something went wrong, there would be no delay coming out, because the reaction is infinitely fast and the sound comes out at the same time. I suddenly remembered Tap Tempo, didn't I, halfway through the song, and I went, oh yeah, at which point the backing vocals went, literally Gail, Jen, all looked up and went, what are you doing? And I was suddenly like trying to spread the pages down. Don't fiddle on Sunday morning. Yes, lead well, by example, right? Yeah. Quickly about SPL meters. So we haven't had one at Wimborne, or got one at Wimborne, we haven't used it. I'll be honest, I don't often get complaints. Which is a blessing, because I know a lot of PA guys do, and I think we're blessed in our, definitely Fordingbridge, and mostly in Wimborne, of going, you know, what people typically don't complain. You know, people are typically happy and gracious enough to accept that everyone has their own mix, and we're doing the best of our job. Now,
and you can move around the room to not position yourself.
Exactly, there is scope that you're not forced to sit in a seat, are you? Anyway, sometimes these complaints come, and I know we've experienced a few of those in the last couple of months. And so what I want to say first of all is, like, if that happens, let me know, because actually you guys shouldn't be taking the flak for that. That's, you know, that's what I'm here for, that's what Paul's here for. Going, actually, I've told you to do a job, and that's why you're doing it. Which is where this comes in to kind of protect you a bit. So I've worked with Paul really closely to set a sound level. So we've got one here at 4D, I'm going to set one at Wimborne as well, of going, I want worship to be within this scope of dB, which honours us, it honours the band, it also honours the congregation. But if you're sticking within that, you're doing within the scope of what I've asked you to do. And if there's any complaints, therefore, it's not your fault, because actually you're doing as you've been asked to do. Okay, so that takes the pressure off you guys and puts it onto me, which I'm more than happy to carry.
That's the point we go, thank you for your comments, we'll pass them on.
Exactly, yes. What you should say is that your call is very important to us. So here, typically, preaching is about 63 to 65, worship's 83 to 85.
Hang on, is it 16?
So it's written at the top, and it'll be written at the top of the desk as well.
Oh, when it gets
Yeah, when it gets to Wimborne, I will write it out. So you'll be talking about 80-ish, 85-ish for worship-ish. Obviously that hall's different to this one, and it varies from many to many, but that's the feel that we have for this church. Now, I know churches that run at 90, I know churches that run, Westport, for example, used to run closer to 100. But that's a different venue, that's a different environment, and actually this is the environment that the eldership want here. They don't want it, we've actually got quite a big demographic, and we feel that range fits as well. And again, like Joe said, if you want it quieter, then you leg it off to the back, and if you want it louder, then you can put your earlobes to the speakers if you want. But that is like kind of the only thing I'd like you guys to kind of fit with, if that's okay. As I said, I'm getting to that at Wimborne. I haven't got there yet, but that's my job tomorrow.
Can I just clarify, you just turn that on and it tells you?
Okay, so there's it does.
So I've never
This one has a load of settings on it, and all you need to change is to make it says slow. So if you see at the top it says slow, there's a button that says, when you turn it on it says fast.
Right.
Basically, that's how much it averages it out. So if it's doing fast, it's doing like instant peaks. If it's slow, it's taking an average, and I'm concerned by average rather than peaks, because actually, as soon as Joel hits, the snare, that high frequency is going to peak it. And if I'm doing that, then I'm going to be actually running an average probably about 70s, because that snare, you get a nice song where you want to hear the drums, you turn the drums up, and then suddenly you're turning everything down again because you're hitting the tops. But if you go over it briefly, that's absolutely fine. It's not like it's a criminal offence or anything. But what I'm saying is what I want is an average over a Sunday morning is 83 to 85 here. Okay, but Wimborne's to be clarified.
Turn the desk off because you can still hear my drums.
Oh, look,
It's 90 on its own, there's no desk.
Yeah, it's nice. Your drum is lovely. So Wimborne's one is very similar. Again.
On and slow.
Okay, one word of warning with this is I experienced it last week, no, week before, and you experienced it last week. This was giving me some funny figures.
Yeah.
And we're like, I was doing sound check.
Well, I freaked out last week where it was all seeming absolutely fine, and then the first song came on, and to my ears it sounded like we normally have. Yeah, that was spitting out 55, 60. And I was like, I looked at you, I went, oh my word, what is happening? Either my head was doing something weird, or that was doing something. I think we worked out quite quickly. It was that.
The battery levels on this were so low that it wasn't operating as it should be. And actually, I'll just notice they're low again, so I might put some other batteries, maybe put some non-rechargeables, because some devices don't like rechargeable batteries. So it could be that. But yeah, we just...
Is it D's, isn't it?
Triple A's. 4 triple A's. Yeah, I know. Oh, I know. 4, oh yeah, I know. Why not just put 2 double A's in?
Just put a D battery in
Or
it.
D, yeah. So, this isn't a gospel thing to go by. This and these are you know if it sounds alright, you know what that sounds like, especially after you've been doing it a few weeks and you're following this like you're going through a speed camera kind of thing. Once you get that feeling, you'll go, oh, that sounds about right. You're just using that. When you're driving, you never look at your speedo like this, do you? You'll hit everything. You glance down every now and again just to kind of go, oh, it feels about right. And if you're doing 60 to 40 because school kids are whizzing past and stuff. So you just need to watch. You get a good feel for it, don't you? You know what feels right. And so trust this and use this to back you up.
Yeah.
And this is your insurance policy against complainers.
Okay.
Cool. Let's talk about fault finding. So fault finding is one of those things that can turn into sheer panic on Sunday morning. And I've been there, or mid-service. Mid-service is great fun when something like starts cracking, hissing, and popping and disappearing. So I want to briefly talk about fault finding. just to kind of give you guys a bit more confidence on the Sunday morning of stuff. All these PowerPoints that I've made are on our training hub. I don't know if you know we've got a training hub. Colin and I are making a PA and worship hub where we're putting all our resources together so in one place, not just stuck in a WhatsApp group from like 4 years ago. And so I'll send that link back out again. It's really useful. There's loads of videos and stuff on there. There's a lot of SQ5 stuff on there. I'm looking to put a lot of X32 stuff on there as well once I spend time trawling through YouTube finding decent videos. Yeah, so all this stuff's on there, so it's just not, if you ever want to go back and reference it, just pop on there, download it and stuff. Right, fault finding. So, often faults we get are no signal, low signal, high signal, or distortion. That's typically on Sunday morning the stuff you'll get, or a mixture of the four. Those faults, often, normally if things are working fine, you'll have nothing up to it. If you listen now, you can hear a slight buzz out of the speakers, and that's just electrical interference. You're never going to get rid of that. That's just the nature of the beast. Anything that's hissing or you go like a really like sound or stuff like that, that's when you start thinking, is it disruptive? If it's not disruptive, my heart is just leave it. Right? Unless it's there going, or you can't hear an instrument for something, then step in. Otherwise, if it's like a sound, if you've got time, have a look, but typically on a Sunday morning, because they haven't done a worship practice during the week, they are frantically trying to get their worship practice done. And it doesn't honour them particularly well by us trying to find a fault that actually only we would notice, really. You know, if it was like one church Sunday, I'd probably put a little bit more effort into it, but on a regular Sunday morning, 80% of people aren't going to notice, 10% of people don't care, and the other 10% of us who are like, oh, that's a bit irritating, why hasn't he sorted that out? But don't feel like you have to, and actually, in those moments, don't feel you've got to carry that burden alone, because I've been in that moment going before, I don't know what to do, I don't know what to do. And actually, just even talking about it to a musician who knows their instrument as well. Like, I can't tell you which acoustic guitars have got a 9-volt battery by looking at from the face of it, I can't tell you. Unless I see a little control panel on top of it or something, I don't know, normally. But the guys will know their instruments well, so it's often worth having a conversation with those. People like Dan, Mark, Joel are good people to be talking about, because those guys are pretty switched on when it comes to tech, and actually are quite a good sounding board as well. If you go through a fault going, I just can't work this out, and go, Mark, what do you think? Because all of those guys are incredibly experienced. Right, so.
I would also like to talk about Gordon's guitar.
Oh, Gordon's guitar is a special piece, isn't
It
it?
is a very special piece, yeah. I struggle just trying to get the right levels for the guitar, but there's also like, tends to be hissing noise as well.
Yeah, because he doesn't use a DI box as well, does he? Normally,
No.
which baffles my brain a lot, and I can't work out why he doesn't use a DI box, but he doesn't. And it seems to work, but his gain is normally reasonably high as a result. So
Yeah.
I don't really know what to answer that with, other than
He's got a DI box in his guitar, hasn't he?
yeah, he does. Yeah,
It's got, because he comes out the back on a 3-pin jack and microphone.
or a TRS cable. Sometimes it's TS cable, jack, core jack. Sometimes it's all very confusing.
Yeah.
Whatever cable I offer him, it's the wrong one.
Has he got more than one guitar? They all look
Oh, no,
slightly
he's
different.
probably got
You're gonna know.
15 guitars, probably knowing Gordon. He is a collector of fine guitars. Funny, I've got one of his guitars in my spare room.
Doesn't know about it.
He does, yeah. Well, he came to me like months ago to look, because I was like, I want to start playing, and I just have never found any time to start playing. So there's nothing really that much to say about this, other than this is what I think typically are faults that we find. So with signal faults, so you're looking at the desk, you've gone to do your gain and you've got no signal at all. You've turned the gain right up and there's like nothing. So for me that speaks of there's a broken wire, something's not even plugged in, there's possibly an instrument fault going on. Low signal, well it's because I forgot to turn the gain up normally. If it's a high signal, it's because it's either preset itself or someone before me has gone like, oh we'll have all of that, thank you very much. Sometimes like a keyboard, Sarah's keyboard's normally key for this, where the sound that comes out of the keyboard is either nothing or everything. And when it goes to the DI box, you remember we talked about DI boxes like, what was it, 6-7 months ago, we talked about those two little buttons that take the volume out. Okay, sometimes you put those in, sometimes you need to take those out, and that's something when you're opening fault finding, thinking DI box. Okay, let's take all the 20, if I've got no signal, take all the 20s off, and let's start from there, because that's the likely fault. High signal, too much gain, distortion. Like Sarah's keyboard, if she's got both 20s out and she's turned herself right up, it will come out like, and so that'll be your first thinking, right, if it's loud, turn it down, if it's quiet, turn it up, and you know, start with that and then start working out why.
So would you have so for example on the keyboard, would you want them to have their volume, so like in my car stereo, I turn the volume up high on my phone so it gets into my thing and then turn that down low?
Yes, ideally.
So their volume is always up high,
Yes,
and
ideally.
then maybe you knock off the 20s.
Yes.
Okay.
Because I'd rather have too much in and I can throttle it rather than having. There is a point where that isn't true, and sometimes you'll get distortion coming out of the actual instrument itself, and at that point you've got to try and find that level point. But typically, yes, with Sarah as well, it's really important to ask her, Sarah, can you play your loudest sound for me? Because she has like a whole broad spectrum of sounds that she plays, from the organs up this end, just tweeting birds down here, and mid-service, if I've set it up on a gain structure for the tweety birds, when it comes to the organs, people are going to die. Like, you know, people are going to be bleeding, and you know, have a whole healing call and everything. Yes, so that's that. Ground loops, we talked about that briefly, about when you get like the electrical power loops and there's a ground switch on the DI box. Sometimes, I very rarely chase a ground loop. Like the hit is so little typically. It's normally the musicians that pick up on it rather than me, because they'll go, I've got a weird hissing sound. And like, I'll then go around and do all the ground loops and see if that makes any difference. Quite often it doesn't, and I just have to suck it up and deal with it. But that's just the nature of the beast. On a Sunday morning, we haven't got time to make it perfect, unfortunately. And of course, no one has their own DI box other than Mark, and so everyone's then swapping DI boxes of a week. No one ever has the same DI box week to week. I'm not going to start labeling DI boxes because I'm not enough. Equipment faults. So we've established that our gain's set fine, but there's still a fault. Your number one thing is cables, because cables get coiled up. They often get coiled up by people who don't know how to coil up cables. They get the ends pulled, they get tripped over, normally by me, dropped, stretched, etc. So normally, if I'm looking for a fault, my first thought is a cable, because they are like cheap and cheerful. No, not cheap and cheerful, they're expensive and cheerful, but they're like, they're the common factor that go, because they are getting coiled up and abused each week, and they're actually getting quite old now. DI boxes, I think we've had, however long we've been running New Life, we've bought 4 DI boxes and only one has ever died in that time. They are sturdy things, like, but if you drop them and throw them around, then they are going to have a bad day. One thing to note, actually, the foldback speakers, we used to have a Helicon voice servo, which got dropped, and that killed it. And actually, that was a reasonably ruggedized thing. So just if you've got, for example, if you've got everything else is working fine, but you've got one fallback speaker that's going, it's not playing ball, try and change it out. I wouldn't even try and fault find one of those. Check the volumes up. I wouldn't even give it a second thought, just change it out. If in doubt, change it out, really. Instrument mics, internal batteries. Obviously, you know about the wireless mics, got its own internal batteries, which we check before we do a service.
Radio mic as well.
Yeah, radio mic. Radio mic's a pain because it's an antique, is our radio mic, and it hasn't got a battery level on it. Yours, one does, which is good. When this one dies, I wish it would die. We can buy a new one that has got a battery level on it. Honestly, it's that walk of a plank, isn't it? One day it just won't work, and you'll be like, oh, I'll have to do a battery change at the front again.
Actually, it's one point actually keeping the battery thing out rather than putting it back in there and sliding it under, because otherwise you're it's not very subtle to get the battery thing out of that little crate.
Not when you've got to move the band out, no.
Exactly.
No, what I was
John,
going to say,
move your chums.
is it worth having your battery checker under the PA desk, and you check that before you put it, so you know the level of the batteries before you put it up the front?
Yes, it's probably a good idea if you remember to do it.
If you remember
It's just,
to do
yeah.
It's different in one because it's next to
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Or we have a grab box that comes to the desk.
Yeah, that's.
Which
That was
then
one of the
has
things I was going to flag.
headphones,
I
SPL meter.
like the idea of that.
Yeah, because like you know, like everything gets put in that and now pushed back. Once worship's in front of it,
Yeah.
So I still put the boxes out there
I was
normally.
going to say, but
Personally,
that's what everyone's doing.
But I just like the idea, you know what, if the stick mic goes or the radio mic goes or anything like that, you've got something to hand, so you're not scrubbing around too much.
Yep, that's kind of my thing.
Yeah, that's
You know what? Let's get a grab bag. So it's identified as a definite thing to grab. Right, so a quick look at some of these. So I have kind of a checklist in my head of stuff I go through when I'm doing fault finding. Is that my key? I list the things I go through in my head of going gain, connections, batteries, phantom power, equipment failure. So I won't typically jump straight to equipment failure unless I'm pretty certain I know what it is. Because actually there could be some smaller things in that process that are gotchas, because you can change your cable and go, oh, the fault's still there. Or it's because the gain's low. Or there's a battery in the system that's gone. And so I use this in my head. I just start with the simple things before jumping to equipment failure. I would, when I was a younger PA guy, I would often jump to like, it must be, I don't know, your guitar must be dead because my equipment's fine. And actually, typically, it's not at all. It's typically someone's not put the connector into the stage box properly, or there's a dodgy cable or something like that, or the phantom power is always a good. I'll get you no signal. We'll get you no signal.
I had a problem last week where we quite quickly worked out that the keyboard was giving out a hideous noise.
Yeah.
And it was just because two cables were plugged in the wrong way around in the back of the keyboard.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Great, and that's a great learning point as well. Going actually, the musicians aren't infallible as well,
Oh yeah.
because actually they're rushing as much as we are to get set up.
Yeah.
How easy is it to go to transpose two cables?
Exactly,
It's the easiest thing in the world. Like even this morning, I nearly put the white cables all the way around into the box. It's so easily done.
Yeah, for sure.
I think while we're here, one thing that's worth potentially noting as well is like don't panic.
Yeah, absolutely.
Kind of a mate of my dad's is a neurologist, and he's saying one of the biggest problems he has is not that the grads they get in don't know what they're doing with neurology, because of course they don't. Right? They're still learning. Biggest thing is, it's like, well, if you don't know what to do, sit in front of the patient, make them feel safe, do the checks that you're told to check, act confident, act like you know what the thing is, and then say, I just want to go check something with a colleague, and then you go, I don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
And actually, that's totally, if I'm dealing with people, it's like, it's not something that's not coming out of speakers, it's almost like, okay, I'm not getting any level, just give me a second to check things.
Yeah.
I'm not professional, and then that keeps them calm, and probably they will start checking the stuff actually bottom up. Oh, I'm not giving any level. Oh, sorry, my fault.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, is there no light on? There's no light on the DI box. Is it phantom power?
Absolutely.
So, and you'll be going down. Yeah.
I think and Bill, what you just said, not being too proud to ask for help. You know what? It is generally okay.
Yeah.
I wasn't too proud to straight away last week just look at you go, mate,
What the heck?
What is going on? Because normally I'd say probably within a congregation, there's going to be at least one or two other PA guys who you can call on.
Or someone who's technically.
Like a couple of times when I walked in at 10:15 and Gail just looked at me and gone, got hit. So I think just actually, no, it's really okay to just ask for help.
And if there's no one else around, do give us a call.
Yeah.
Like the only place you can't call me at Wimborne is because I haven't got a signal. So dead spot. I think I've got a couple of examples of. Oh yeah, we literally just talked about that. Choose the quickest option.
Sorry, before we go on, phantom power.
Yes.
Tell me what phantom power is.
Phantom power, so 48 volts. It's called phantom power, 48 volts. There's other different
One
versions.
there is 48 volts.
Yeah, basically what it does is it sends 48 volts down the line. Here it just tells the stage box to do it, but like our
Is that when you're annoyed with a musician?
you can shop. bit of
I
shock.
love that.
Bit of shock therapy. Yeah, the cable goes up that
Or
way.
if they're struggling to hit the high notes.
Go
Go on, ee!
Wait for Alice to go there.
Yeah.
I like that.
So 48 volts, DI boxes have a option, ours do certainly, of having either a 9-volt battery in them or taking power off the PA circuit. And so allowing that puts 48 volts to power a DI box.
Right, okay.
And so, for example, on your desk at Wimborne, on the left-hand side, you've got a circle with a line through it, and next to it is, I think, is it PP or is it 48 plus 48?
That's
I
it.
think it's like possible.
Yeah, so that on and off. So we need to be careful about when we're applying it. So, for example, most instruments won't really care if you've accidentally zapped 48 volts down them. However, a ribbon microphone or a ribbon microphone will just disintegrate in front of your face if you put 48 volts down it. Some keyboards will have a real hissy fit if you send 48 volts into them from two directions.
I killed a laptop speaking
Yeah.
once.
Yeah.
Somebody built. It was back in the day when you would just turn the whole phantom power on for the desk or
Yeah.
on.
Oh, yeah.
And I was so mad. Somebody had built a cable that was XLR to a little thing,
half,
to a 2.5 thing. I stuck it inside my laptop, and that was the last time I used my headphone port.
So it's just being aware, and like I say, 9 times out of 10, especially the equipment that we've got, it won't make the slightest bit of difference. But it makes a massive difference if you don't have it on when it needs to be on, because you won't get a signal.
Is there a list in the training on about what instruments you use phantom power?
No, but I will make one. It's a really quick.
A general rule is if they're coming out on an XLR, so you've got you've got balanced and unbalanced connections, yeah. If it's coming out as balanced and it's like a proper piece of studio equipment, you're probably fine.
Yeah.
If it's unbalanced, so out of the DI box will be fine. Out of most of the people that use sound cards will be fine. The thing I'd be looking at is if you've got a headphone port or somebody's, headphone port on a laptop, headphone port on a keyboard.
Yeah.
Sure, okay.
And the musician will know. They'll know their equipment to go.
Most of the profiles on here has it set up, so whatever it is, has it already automatically on or not anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And if they've got, like, say, Sarah's keyboard, the DI box is connected in series as it should be, and that you're getting no signal, my first thought is thinking, like, connections. No, we're going with connections. Okay, next on my list, phantom power. Oh yeah, phantom power's not on. And typically our ones got a little light on them to say they're active. I think you've got the same DI boxes at Wim, so if there's, basically if there's no signal, you can't find why there's no signal, check the DI boxes.
Give it a little boost.
Yeah. Right. So a quick example then. So we've got a vocal microphone and we've got a fault. We're getting no signal through on that. So first of all, check the gain, and it makes no difference. So I'm wanging that gain up and down. It's making zero difference. There's no DL box in circuit, so I'm not worried about that. Connections, they appear secure. I've wiggled them. Seems fine. There's no batteries in the system because it's a cardioid microphone, so it's just a standard, vocal microphone that you can like kick around a football pitch, it'll still be fine. Well, there's no phantom power required, so condenser mics, if you ever deal with those, we've got like 2 in our entire family of churches, which are in that box, so you will very rarely come across a condenser mic. If you're using a condenser mic, you'll know you're using a condenser mic. Those guys need power. I would consider equipment failure, so change the cable. If that doesn't change it, change the mic. That's pretty much your go-to. And if it's not working after that, then there is some serious issue with the desk, which is going to be irrecoverable on a Sunday morning. Another quick one. We've got no signal on the bass guitar, so you can see you've got the guitar, it goes into the DI box, into the stage box, and goes to the desk. Again, makes no difference. We know the DI settings are correct, so we've got phantom power going through. Connections, again, appear secure, give it a wiggle, nothing's changed. There's no batteries in the system. Phantom power is connected. Again, I'll look at equipment failure, replace the cable, then the DI box. Last one, no signal on the acoustic guitar. Again, makes no difference. Both the 20 decibels off the 20 dB off the DI box. Connections, again, insecure, wiggle them. the internal 9-volt battery's flat on the thing, which therefore gives it off. Oh yeah, it is good. Audio from the fallback speaker is distorted. Gain looks good. You know, I've got a great gain structure in the back on the desk. All the connections are being secure. It's the fallback monitor's plugged in. It's good. There's no phantom power. Musicians turn the volume up to max. I've had that before. And it's absolute experience, but it's absolutely kicking out tons, and whatever they do is sounds really distorted because they turn the volume up on the actual speaker. Again, it's just simple things like that sometimes that can be gotchas. You know, they're chasing your tail going, I can't work out where this fault is, and it's literally someone's turned the volume up too much because they've been fiddling. I had that once with, they've been fiddling with the EQ, and they turn the high really high and the bass really low, and they're like, I can't hear my keys, I can't hear my keyboard through this. It's like, well, because you turned your bass off, that's why. Turn that up, there's your keys again. Right, we've got cable tester. Now this is like, if you've got time on your hands and you really want to have a fiddle, then feel free to have a fiddle with them. However, I would say this is not your delight on a Sunday morning when you're trying to find a fault. This is kind of, I bought this for slow days like today when actually I need to go and test equipment or I take it home and stuff. This is really cool because it's got tons of connections and it tests all sorts. Just be careful, it doesn't test directly. You know, we've got jacks, quarter jacks. You can get different types. You can get tip and sleeve, which are the 2 ones. You can get tipped wing sleeve, which are the 3 ones. It doesn't do TRSs directly. You have to kind of bodge it in through a couple of adapters. So not that we've got many. I don't think we've got any TRSs anyway. So this is really cool. So we turn it on, and it says cable tester. And so you plug the first one in, and you plug the second one in. And it tells you if it's got a fault, which this one has because I've snipped one of the cables. But it also tells you, for me it's really helpful because it tells you which pins duff as well. But what is really cool is this does have a function on it called test tone. And if you click it up, and basically it will flick the test tone to the desk or whatever. So basically if you've got a suspect line somewhere, or like an instrument's being you can take this, you can plug it into the iBox, you can plug it into the stage box, and it'll give you a test tone, so it'll go sound, but you know the line's good. And so I can go through the test. So when I revamped the multi-core, I took this and I was going on every single line, because then I know all the lines are good.
Yeah, that's good.
So it's really useful for that. If you've got, but again, it's not really a Sunday morning gig. If it's good, you'll get a pass line.
I'll be honest,
I
I'll
would
just take random tuning.
Absolutely, and that's what I expect. What I'm saying is, we've got this. If you find that you've got half an hour and you've got a duck cable,
Well, especially
However, now I really want to bring that cable to my house.
Yes.
well, there's probably a time for that. You know what? If you've only got a 3-piece band and they're really established, and quite often you've maybe done the sound check's done by 9:45, but you've had a dodgy cable. That's quite interesting to be able to do that.
have a play.
Yeah.
If you come to me and go, look, I've got this cable pin 2 stuff, that's like, you've done your homework.
That's cool.
Just to show you what I did, so you know, and where these typically fail, I slipped like that. And that is really common for these of just where someone's been like wangling it around and the solder, either whoever's manufactured it hasn't brought the solder right up to the sleeve or whatever, and it's just had a hard life. All it is a thin bit of tin. That's all it is. And that's, really typical of those things. Right, we've spent way longer on fault finding than last time, but that's cool. It's important. Good.
You lost your laptop.
Maybe HDMI tester.
Yeah.
Did that not do it?
No.
That was me. That's amazing.
It does RJ45, which is quite useful, having bought an RJ45 test.
Yeah.
hoping to have like multi-track, and we could have like a really good fun play around with EQ. So that has kind of fallen on its back significantly, to the point where we are just going to have a play with a single track, which I can still do single track, which is fine. EQ. EQ is one of those like dark arts things that everyone's kind of like, when they start doing PA training, it's like, we don't talk about it, because it's like, no one really understands it enough to be able to talk about it. And like, I know when I did PA back at Ringwood, I started when I was 13, 14. And like, I didn't even know EQ was a thing until we started at 4D, and Paul's talking about EQ, I'm like, what are you on about, mate? Like, and then I started researching and going, how have I spent like, however many years learning PA, never being told about what EQ is? And then it becomes this thing that, if I ignore it, it's not a problem. And maybe if I twirl a couple of knobs and it's worked out okay, I'm just going to leave it and not really understand how it works. And I kind of want to give you guys enough tools to kind of have a confidence to go, I'm going to have a play. If it doesn't work out, it's not the end of the world. As long as you don't make it worse, you're probably doing, you know. And often on Sunday morning, if there's like a slight ring from the headset mic, people will notice it, but as, you know, they should be interested enough in what the preacher's saying to not let it bother them. Like if it's like squealing and awful, then you know what, actually don't try and fight it, get them to use the handheld instead, and we'll deal with that another day. That's quite often my you know, I could spend 5 minutes trying to sort it out, but within, you know, 15% into a preach, which then people have been distracted for that and have missed the key opening statement that they've made. Actually, I think it's more important to go, you know what, just turn the headset off, go for the handheld. You know, don't feel that you have to fix it, because our headset mic particularly, headset mics are vulnerable anyway to feedback, but ours, for some reason, is just, I don't know, it's been one of those things I've battled for my entire life at New Life, I think. So EQ is what, when and how. So what is EQ? So we're sculpting the sound. What we're doing is we're taking the sound that comes into the desk and we are changing it and then sending it back out again. That's literally all EQ does. So you could have a flatline EQ, so you're still EQing it, but actually you've made no adjustments. So it goes into the EQ mix, nothing changes, it comes back out and then it comes up speakers. Or we can take out bites of sound, so we can take chunks, and then looking at a graph, think of a straight line with a positive and a minus, and if you're taking stuff out, you're dipping down into it, so you're digging chunks out of it. If you're boosting, you're going above the line and you're pushing it up. So we can remove sounds we don't want, and we can highlight sounds we do want. So, removing sounds, so we're talking about feedback and deconflicting instruments and vocals. When you've got a bass guitar and a keyboard playing together, those guys, keyboard has a spectacular range of sounds. It can go right down to what, 500 hertz probably less than, probably down to 250, probably even less than that. You know, we're getting down to that points where you cannot hear it anymore, it's so bassy. Right up to probably 15,000 hertz, thereabouts. You know, we're talking like the whole spectrum of sound a keyboard can achieve. But if you've got Sarah, who can be quite bass heavy sometimes, and you've got James on bass, those guys are now conflicting down at the bass end for sound. The thing is, only a certain amount of sound can come out of those speakers, and only our brains can only process certain amounts of sound. If you just throw bass at someone, you'd be very difficult to differentiate where that bass is coming from. Now Sarah might be kicking out the best melodies down the bass things, and James might be kicking it out, but actually what you get is this kind of muddy effect where they're conflicting against each other. And what we do is we can use EQ to go, actually, you know what, I'm going to take the bass off the bass guitar cannot go high. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to deconflict by taking a chunk of bass out of the keyboard, which then gives space for the bass to do its cool stuff, and then allows everyone to hear clearly that and clearly this together. So that's why we do it. And also feedback, when we get that whole ring sound, which is only about 500 hertz, I think, in here. Now we need to do, there is a way of kind of setting up the desk to fit the room, which I haven't done, and I'm just yet to find the time to do, which will make all of our lives easier, but one day I'll get around to actually doing it. What else have we got? Okay, I am going to show you this video. We watched this, I think we watched this before, at least it's very similar to it, but I kind of want to train your ears for what we're listening for before we do it. Because no point showing you this video after we do it. Right. Let's.
By associating a vowel sound to each octave frequency band.
That's a little thing.
If you haven't seen any of my other videos on ear training, here's the basic concept. You can learn to identify frequencies by associating a vowel sound to each octave frequency band. This video is all about how to improve your ability to EQ drums, vocals, and other instruments by harnessing the power of that simple technique. But if this is our first time meeting, my name is Kyle. Welcome to Audio University. If you want to get started right away, I put together a guide that gives you instructions on how to get started with a free online tool for practicing this method. You can find that guide at audiouniversityonline.com/eartrainingguide. Now, I always demonstrate this technique using pink noise because that's the
So I'm showing a bit of that in the bottom there. I've broken that. What's that about not fitting?
This is not something.
If you haven't seen any of my other videos on ear training, here's the basic concept. You can learn to identify frequencies by associating a vowel sound to each octave frequency band.
Together now?
This video is all about how to improve your ability to EQ drums, vocals, and other instruments by harnessing the power of that simple technique. But if this is our first time meeting, my name is Kyle. Welcome to Audio University.
Hi, Carl.
If you want to get started right away, I put together a guide that gives you instructions on how to get started with a free online tool for practicing this method. You can find that guide at audiouniversityonline.com/eartrainingguide. Now, I always demonstrate this technique using pink noise because that's the easiest way for beginners to hear the vowel sounds for the first time. But it's a little bit unrealistic. In a real-world situation, you won't be mixing pink noise, you'll be mixing music, which is made up of many different instruments and can be a bit more difficult. Let's take a look at a few examples that are more realistic when it comes to mixing a song in the real world. We'll start by listening to drums. I'll play it again with no filter, and then I'll add the filter in. And I want you to listen for one of these vowel sounds when I do that. You may have heard an ah sound when I switched on the filter. Looking at the guide I mentioned at the beginning of the video, I can see that ah corresponds to 1 kilohertz. Okay, another example with drums. Try to hear the vowel sound that pops out when I engage the filter. Did you hear it that time? Here it is again. This time 4 kilohertz was boosted, which corresponds to an E sound. Okay, one more example with drums, and then we'll move on to some other instruments. Again, listen to which vowel sound cuts through the mix when I engage the filter. one's a bit more subtle, especially if you're not listening on a good pair of headphones or speakers. Listen particularly to the low mid frequency bands. This time it was an ooh sound, or 250 hertz. Now, in these examples, we were able to listen to both the unfiltered version of the drums compared to the filtered version of the drums, which makes it easier to hear the change. In a real situation, you won't have that luxury. In a real mix, you'll need to rely on what you think sounds good and listen for which changes at which vowel sounds will help you get there. Let's listen to this acoustic guitar I just recorded in my office here. Now, this time I just want you to listen to the recording as it is and make a subjective judgment on which vowel sound you would turn down in order to make the recording sound better. Everyone will have a different opinion here, so you're not right or wrong. But in my opinion, the guitar sounds a little bit boomy, which could be due to an excess of ooh, or 250 hertz. So let's try removing some 250 hertz to see how it sounds.
There's definitely
Of course, if it's possible, I'd recommend just moving the microphone until you find a placement that sounds good as is. But re-recording isn't always an option, and that's when a little bit of EQ can be helpful. In all of the examples up until this point, we've been mixing only a single instrument. And in a real situation, in a live performance, or a recording with multiple instruments, you'll need to listen to the mix as a whole. Sometimes soloing an instrument can sound terrible alone, but in the context of a larger mix, it fits right in. Let's do one more example to get a feel for making adjustments to a single instrument in the context of a whole mix. I want you to pay special attention to the vocal in this mix. What do you think could be better?
I bet I know exactly what you're thinking. You got a big yard out there, nobody cares. But what you don't realize is that you touch so many lives of people who want you to give life just one more chance.
To me, it sounds like the vocal is getting buried beneath the acoustic guitar. Now, there are endless ways you could address this problem. You could use compression, you could use EQ on the acoustic guitar to create space for the vocal. But for the purpose of this video, I want you to ask yourself, what additive EQ, what frequency bands would you boost in the vocal to make this mix sound better?
I bet I know exactly what you're thinking.
What do you think?
You got a big yard out there, nobody cares.
It might happen.
But what you don't realize is that you touch so many lives of people who want you to give life just one more chance.
I think if we used an EQ to boost some of the higher frequencies in the vocal, we would get a closer sounding vocal. And it doesn't always have to be only a single vowel sound. This high shelf will boost everything above 1 kilohertz. That includes ah, a, e, and even some more sibilant sounds like s.
I bet I know exactly what you're thinking. You got a big yard out there, nobody cares. But what you don't realize is that you touch so many lives of people who want you to give
be a better way to accomplish this, but I think that the vocal set's better after making that simple change. Again, get started.
Chill out after you start advertising and stuff. Now, the thing with that song is, like, I listened to this like loads of times, and this is one of the videos I used when I was trying to teach myself EQ. It's quite a spooky song, isn't it? It's quite dark and kind of moody. And if you were to take the bass off the guitar to make space for the vocal, I think you'd lose some of that. I use the word smoky, and for me, that just kind of goes that kind of like moody. You'd lose that moody layer. And I know when like you do acoustic sets here, sometimes you kind of want that muddy kind of feel. Just personally, I don't know, but this is where EQ is, like you say, it's so subjective. It's like this is what I think sounds good, and this is where kind of your experience of listening to music is key. Okay, actually, this is the sound that I like. I know I like this. Now, not everyone's going to agree with me, but this is why it's an art form and not a science. Because actually, this is my worship. This is how I'm doing it, and I want to free you guys to go. You do what you think sounds best. You know, I'm not going to come and tell you that it's wrong, because actually, this is where I want your creativity to come through. Like, if like it's shrieking and people are like wailing and gnashing your teeth, I might come and have a conversation about maybe we need to turn the high stuff down a little bit. But actually, you know, I want you guys to feel free to go. This is my art. This is what I want to do. We talked about this. Talked about creative space. Okay, so when we're doing it, we need to think. Literally, like we were just done, we need to think what's missing. Choose what needs to be changed to make it better. So even in that conversation, you know, a bit of music, we're thinking, oh, I need a bit of high, or I need to take it a little bit lower. Either which way, that's a decision we made. You need to listen, imagine, try, and evaluate. So you need to listen to it before. You need to make the change. Listen to it, imagine what you want it to sound like, because actually sometimes you can go on a bit of a fishing expedition and go, well, try this, oh, that sounds alright, and by, you know, that's quite a difficult way to do it, because you can trick your brain into thinking something sounds better when actually it doesn't. So listen, imagine what it wants to sound like, try it. If it doesn't sound like you want it to sound like, then put it back. Don't try 7 different things, and then it sounds alright, because you have no idea which of those 7 things have done it. And if your graph is looking like a whole like noodle of wool, then something's probably not right. You know, you're probably losing some key frequencies out of that, whatever it is, instrument vocal. If you've got like boosts over here, loads of boosts and loads of cuts, and something's probably not right. Probably. I'm not saying it isn't, because I've had some times where I've had it all over the place and it sounds amazing, but typically stuff will look reasonably neat and consistent across the board. Yeah, move it back if it didn't work, because that could be a real thing. I got myself lost, especially with the dials on the old board, of going, I've got myself lost. I can't remember what it looked like in the first place. At least with this and the X82, you've got a reset button, or you can recall the library to go, that was awful, I've made a real muck of this, I can just reset it back to a no good quantity. But yeah, little movements, and just have a play. We're going to play a little bit. So we were playing only finishing at 11. If you guys want to hang around and have a play, I've got a load of stop checkers to the 8. So the desk is here if you guys want to play with it. So don't feel you've got to rush off at 11. But also don't feel you've got to stay, because I appreciate it kind of a little bit longer than I wanted. So a little bit of terminology we use. Obviously we can boost the signal, we can cut the signal. The filters are the bits that we are using to cut and to boost. And so we'll see that in a minute with the dips and the troughs and the peaks. They're the filters. Okay, so they're the bits we are straining out of the music, those bits. In and out, so on this desk it says in and out. I can't remember what it says on the 32. I can't remember.
I don't even think it says anything.
Is it just an active light, isn't it? I think.
Yeah.
So in and out of this means if it's on or not. So if it's got a green light on, it's on. We have different types of points we can use. So we have, I've got some pictures of these. So we have on both desks, we have low, medium, and high frequencies. We have 4 points which we can cut out. We also have a high pass filter, which is a low cut filter. So some of these things have two terminologies which you may hear. So a high pass filter lets high frequencies pass, or a low cut filter cuts low frequencies out. It's the same thing, but use two tones because why just have one to cover everything. At the other end, you'll have a low pass filter or a high cut filter because it cuts all the high stuff off. So you just kind of look at the words and go, what you actually are talking about. We have filter types. So like we saw in the video, what he did is he put a shelf in. So you sometimes see like a bell curve, so a little peak, so that's a bell. You have a shelf, which is what he did without the vocal. Basically everything over a certain point gets done. And that's pretty much the two types you'll get typically. And you have a cut filter, which is like a shelf but more aggressive. Again, I'll play those in a minute. Q. Now Q is a fun one because it is a super complicated mathematical algorithm which you don't need to know about. All you need to know is that Q changes how big it is or how wide the cut is. So you can have a really wide Q which covers a spectrum of frequencies, or you can have a really narrow Q which cuts out a single frequency. I'll show you all that in a minute. It's nothing to get like your head into tears about. It's just, if someone's talking about Q, that's what they're talking about. They're talking about how wide or how narrow the filter is working. Okay, so can you actually see that?
I'm just going to change the font.
Yes, yeah, Q turns out an M, and then it gets into a light bulb, and then Bond gets all upset. So this is a parametric EQ. So both of our desks use parametric EQ. So if you cast your mind back, Joe, to the analog desk, we had all those knobs and stuff. That is just an EQ. That is just a bog standard EQ, sometimes called a graphic EQ, but a graphic EQ is normally like, you get the old school stereos. You used to get like the old sliders. Yeah, very similar. We use a parametric EQ, which is honestly, it's just phenomenal because actually we can see what is going on and we can see if it makes sense rather than trying to interpret what each dial is doing. We have 5 settings on a parametric EQ. We have a high pass filter and we have 4 tunable points we can do. And we can change the filter types on those, so we can change it from a bell to a shelf to a cap. What we have here is 3 bell curves. What I'm talking about Q is you've got 3 different Qs there. So you've got from the left to the right is what I would say is a reasonably medium Q, so that's kind of middle of the road Q. You've got a really narrow Q, really small Q, and you've got a really wide Q. And so we can tailor that to what we want. And that's the joy of having these digital desks, is actually we get the scope of how wide, rather than picking out specific frequencies, actually I can take out a whole chunk of frequencies that I don't want. So for example, with a bass, I will typically wind off the high frequency stuff because I'm really not that interested in what high offerings they give me. With Alice, if she's got a stinking cold, I'll take some of her bass off, and I'll take some of her top off as well, because actually I don't want that nasally horrible noise that's coming out of her when she's got a cold. Normally she's great. But sometimes you'll find an instrument going, I just don't like that noise, or it's creating some kind of weird resonance in the room. And that's the other thing we've got about Battle, is the resonance in the room. You can't account for it until you're in the room and you're going, oh, that sounds rubbish. And that's the difference with working in headphones and out the speakers. When we're doing EQ, don't do it through headphones, because what is in your headphones and what comes out the speakers is 2 different games. So they are bell curves. These are your cut filters. So we've got a high pass filter on the left, and we've got a low cut filter. High pass filter on the left and a low pass filter on the right, or a low cut and a high cut, depending on how you want to look at it. And so all we're doing is literally severing the ends, and those are obviously slidable, so you can slide them right in. You could create like a really narrow band of sound coming out of narrow frequency band if you wanted by sliding them both together. Like, I don't know what instrument you'd want to do that on, but like, I don't know, if with the new drum kit, we have the potential of running all the signals out individually, so you could have a slider for the bass, you could have a slider for the snare. If you've got a bass drum, actually I'm not really interested in the high frequencies that's producing. I could put one of those on, narrow it down over the, I don't know, 50 to 500 room, so I get that nice bass noise and nothing else. Yeah, exactly. When we're doing stuff, if you're like mixing on an analog kit, you know, a proper acoustic kit, drum kit, you've got like microphones over the top and stuff like that. Not that we do, but one day we might. is actually, if I've got a microphone over the snare, I don't want the bass coming out of that, because I've got my own bass microphone, and all I'm doing is duplicating sound and potentially creating cone filters and stuff like that, different phases. And actually, I want to cut that bass out, because all I want is snare coming out of there. And so what I can do is I can wind the bass cut filter, the low cut filter up to cut all that bass noise out. And these are shelves, so this is exactly what he used before. So I've got two shelves in place, a low and a high, and all that's doing is just taking a whole range of frequencies and cutting or boosting them. I'll play in a minute. Some tips: use sparingly. You can kill a sound with EQ. You can make it or break it quite easily. I'll show you an example in a minute with a vocal. It's ideal to cut rather than boost, especially with vocal microphones. So high frequencies are more prone to feedbacking typically. They're not exclusive, but actually high frequencies will typically feedback quicker and more explosively than a low frequency. So ideally on a vocal you cut rather than boost. Thoughts, Joel?
Yeah, there's also, so the way that EQs work without like birding, they tend to cause a slight ring around whatever it is you've boosted. So if you cut, if you cut out the bits you don't want, the bits that will be ringing will be the bits you've just turned round down, so it doesn't matter so much. Whereas technically, and it's all taste, right? If you were to like say, oh, I want a bit more thousand, you would boost that bit. You will start to hear that ringing. It's not the same feedback. It will just be slightly around that.
So you're saying even if you cut something, that will produce a ring, but the fact you're cutting it means you probably won't hear it because it's being cut.
Yeah, you need to listen pretty carefully. It can interfere with the clarity.
So only boosting small amounts, ideally, if you start boosting big amounts, you're risking feedback, especially with a microphone. That's just an inherent risk of doing it. I won't say don't do it, just be careful how you do it. Remember the light method, so listen, imagine, try and evaluate, basically. And always put it back. If it doesn't work, put it back, because you'll just then create yourself a bit of a maze to work out where you were originally. There's always the library recall on both of our desks. So if it just goes, if you find yourself in the muddle, go, soz guys, let's try again. On our desk we've got a reset we can do just on the EQ. I'm not sure if we've got that on the case data, I can't remember.
I'm having a reset.
No, and so you can just reset the EQ, or you can just manually put it back to 0. It's really easy to use. Cool, any questions before you have a quick play? I think it's probably all a bit bamboozling to you actually get time to play on it, can't it?
Can I just, one little tip I would say, because you talked earlier about what happens if you've got a ringing on a vocal, for example. It seems like it's feeding back a bit. This is all well and good, but sometimes just turning things down a bit is enough. Like, keep it simple. If you're like, oh, I'm here on Sunday morning, I've got a piano, and I've got an acoustic guitar, and I've got a vocal, and it's not working out. Okay, well, who's leading that song? Acoustic guitar's leading the song. Right, I'll turn that up a bit, and I'll turn the piano down a bit. And then that way I know there might be some clashes, but the congregation can still hear the lead thing. And it's like, often people want a real, we learn to listen for like that real sound of the microphone so we can really hear that the preacher's speaking. But actually, often, if it's only doing a little bit, it will be enough that everybody in the room can still hear, but the chance of feedback is much, much lower. So fundamentally, I'm really lazy. So for example, on a Sunday morning, I'll tend to try and keep the preacher's mic a little bit lower because I can't bother to EQ it around any kind of feedback. Same way, people get confused about turning on and off that microphone in the middle, and I'm really terrible for it, so I don't use it. I kind of turn it down a little bit so it's not going to feed back. But then when something goes up, I'm only trying to, rather than cutting in and out, everybody can still hear them, I'm just boosting it that little bit to make sure that fundamentally laziness is a gift.
Yeah. So with our EQ, how much EQ on this and the effect here, we've got something called RTA, which is real-time analyzer. And what it does is it puts on the screen the frequencies that are coming through the desk, it puts them on as bars, and the highest bars will turn red to show you the peak frequency. And so typically when you get a feedback situation, I would put 20 quid on the fact that that red bar that it's showing is probably your feedback, probably. And that's where you start cutting, you know, and in that moment of sheer panic, when you're trying to cut the feedback, is I would go for the red. And just maybe broaden it slightly, and so you're covering your bases, and then consider narrowing it when you got through that initial firefight of trying to stop that feedback, and then another play. So, for example, with a handheld mic, and so I don't know if the parametric EQ is going to show up on the screen, but if I start putting that up, hopefully we should, if I put a little more gain up. Do you guys want to go that? Yeah. Oh yeah.
Would it help if I said bar black sheep or something?
I'm quite happy doing this bit, and then we will. So, before
Am I filming
you guys
this
want to gather around so you can see this bit.
Oh, broke it.
Okay, so we're currently on handheld channel, and what you can see here on the screen, hopefully, I wonder if it's going to come up as the PEQ, because I can't remember if the RTA comes off on this one or not. I can't remember how to get PEQ on. Not that it matters because we can see it on here. Anyway, here we go. So if you see on here, this is the PEQ screen, and you can see the bars showing the frequency. Now, obviously, my voice is reasonably bassy, so as we'd expect, the lowest frequencies are the peak ones. Okay, so what we can do with this, and the X32 we have to use funky dials, and this one we can touch the screen, and we can do all sorts of stuff. If I really wanted to boost that, you can see that starting to sound really horrible, isn't it?
So much easier than our desk.
Honestly, it's just, but what I can do actually is I can cut out that horrible bassy stuff if that's starting to feedback. Let's really try and throw this to a point where it's going to feedback. Whereas all of that's really high in sibilance, isn't it? That's really horrible, and actually that's not that comfortable to listen to. And so if someone's sharing at the front, all you're thinking about is all I can hear are your S's. Yeah, all I can hear are your S's, and it's really bugging me.
Say silly sausages.
Silly sausages, and I can't quite get the feedback. I wonder if it will go. Can you turn the gain up? Can you see? Can you turn the gain up a little bit for me? Just turn the gain up a little bit, and we'll just try and get. Is it peaking on there?
I can't work out how to bring up the EQ again. I don't use this one very often.
EQ. So
On the screen. Oh, there we go. Sorry. Yep.
Right. Let's, if you just watch that.
Nice.
So there
Oh
you
yeah.
If you cut that out.
go. High frequency again.
And I can still talk, and I'm stood right next to the speaker.
And the gain actually hasn't gone down.
And the gain hasn't gone down. No. And so this is where EQ comes into its own and going, you know what, there is no way anyone would be able to listen to a word I said with that noise, but actually now,
I still don't like listening to you though.
No, I know. But like, what you'll find is people who use a microphone have no idea how to use a microphone. You know, there'll be a handful of people who know, and typically people will be holding it down here, and some people like holding it down here because that really works. But people will wonder, and they will stand here because they're not thinking the way we're thinking. And so our game is trying to damage limitation, really. In those moments, is we got to get these guys to hear what's being said without people dying. Cool. So.
So cool. You just put your finger on it.
Oh, yeah. So
I have to be honest, I feel slightly uncomfortable doing that. I'm not sure if I dial, but
So you can do it on dials. You can still do it on dials. You just select the frequency and then do it on these if you want. Which is how Wimborne's works. So you just select the high frequency and then.
Why does that make you feel uncomfortable?
I don't know. It's just a physical thing.
But the thing is, you've grown up with analog desks. With early digital desks, which that was a thing. This is new, and it's a new toy, and it's really cool. But it does take that kind of step of going. This is a bit.
I have a touchscreen laptop. I barely use the touchscreen because I like to do the buttons, and it's like this feels like I'm in control, and that feels a bit weird just doing that.
Right. What I'm going to do is I'm going to play a track that we had a while ago. So this is Alice singing. Actually, I will show you one thing first. So the damage we can do with a high pass filter. So imitatingly, Alan and Heath have the high pass filter and the EQ on different screens. Now they're hopefully fixing it in the next update. So the high pass filter on this is on a different screen. But if I put my voice in, that sounds a little bit more like my voice. It sounds quite bassy, but actually the damage I can do with it, if I do this, is actually that sounds horribly mousy and is useless. Yeah, it's utterly useless.
Help!
I've heard that in church context though, you know, that is literally, somebody's got the phone and you're like, that's what it's like they're in a tin.
Yes, yeah. That's because their EQ is rubbish. And actually, if I wind that down now...
Not in our church context, I'm just going to say.
I don't know, I'm probably have been there before. But if I start winding that down, you can start seeing, actually, a lot of the bulk of my voice is bassy.
I'll go back to the middle bit.
Back to the middle bit, about there.
Yeah.
Do I sound like a girl?
You sound like you're on a radio.
Do I?
Yeah, but I was about to say it's very kind of can you say no?
Well, you get with the microphone. It's the bass, isn't it? Like you're removing that.
Sorry, mate. Go
The
on.
other way. No, it's all right.
Sorry.
What you get in there is all that wind noise of like somebody using buzz and pulse.
Yeah.
Plosives.
But you manage that with your gate and
With your low pass, yeah.
okay.
Right, so I'm just zeroing
Sorry.
the EQ, the PEQ on that one. And so I'm going to play Alice's track. It's just going to go round and round and round. And I want us to have a play with it. And just, I'll be honest, this isn't a great track from a vocal perspective. It's not the best Alice has sung, but it's all I've got, really. But what is actually quite nice is Alice has got a wonderful range on her vocals, and this is a really good opportunity. What you'll find as well is with multi-track, so we can record tracks off this in multi-track. When you listen to stuff in isolation, it never sounds anywhere as good as when it does in the full context. I don't know if you've ever listened, like soloed or PFL'd mid-service, and you're thinking, what are they doing? But you take the headphones off, and it sounds wonderful, which is the art of singing, I think, isn't it? So I'm going to play this. I'll have a quick play just to kind of demonstrate some stuff, and then you guys, I want you just to play away. Like, this is a chance to work out what does what and how stuff does. Play with Q, play with width. So play with Q, play with, frequency and different kinds of filters. These are the filters here, by the way. So you get to select the top and bottom where you can change how it is. So currently it's a bell, but you can change it to be a shelf, and you can change it to be a cut. So feel free just to play, see what it does, see if you can make Alice sound different. We can try it with some instruments as well. I've got instruments I can use as well. Have a play. Go on, Joe, get involved.
No, I've never really used that. Let somebody actually use this one before, because I'm...
Popping some of the reverb
Go on.
in there.
Come at it. Yeah, come on. We'll play together.
I'll play together.
Because this is just like voodoo to me. Because it moves with this.
You are everything you've promised. Your faithfulness.
So it feels like she needs a cut up the top to stop her from it's too.
All we need is you.
But I wouldn't know how to do that on this. So we're going to kind of cut the top off so she doesn't get too screechy.
Of this bit here.
That's a bell though. Do we need a shelf? That's the high. Oh yeah.
And it's you we adore.
Ooh.
Singing hallelujah.
Oh, okay.
Sing. Because that's quite muddy there, isn't it? But if you bring that down, it clears it up a
Bringing it
bit.
down sounds, better.
What's this one? I'm just messing with things now. No, it sounds like she's in the toilet.
How booming would we want her voice on a Sunday morning?
Sorry, I can't remember how it
Go and have a play.
Have a twiddle. Okay.
That makes it so much easier. We can just touch the screen.
Right. And you just sing properly, please.
No, it's my fault.
So this is. I can't tell what this is doing at the moment.
Hang on, she's not singing. It's on a loop. So.
It's on a loop, so it'll take a second.
Okay, that's good. Yeah.
I'll leave it there for now. See how it starts.
I know it now, but like, right, on Sunday morning.
But again, if you got rid of it,
There we go. Okay. Oh, I can move this way as well.
She spends a lot of time just chatting, doesn't she? Not actually singing.
Typical Sunday morning, really.
You are everything you promised. Your faithfulness is true.
It is round about there, though, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
All we need is you.
What does this do?
Makes it more booming.
Waiting here for
And it makes her higher seem a lot higher.
Lift that and grace. And it's you.
Mess with that.
Mess with this.
Yeah.
Okay.
See what it does. Let's move it.
I'm gonna change it into this.
What's one of those?
And actually, I was
Okay. I don't know whether I would change anything else really.
See, but this, to me, I feel quite confident I could do that now. But on our one, because it's got this all relates to, I'd be like, am I twiddling the wrong way?
Yeah.
So that is this
That
section,
one. Then HM is that one. LM is,
which is that blue bit.
is the blue bit. LM is the.
Because it's all colour coordinated, it just makes it so much. I've never messed with it. Anyway, right.
If you imagine like
Waiting